Although I do think the majority of people who are picking up the Cosmere RPG are already a fan of the books made by Brandon Sanderson based in the universe of the Cosmere, I do think there's a lot of people that are just fed up with other systems like D&D and are looking elsewhere and have come across the Cosmere RPG because people are really enjoying it. So that's why I thought I would put together this video to help anyone understand the world of the Cosmere RPG, because I do think that is the biggest hurdle for people getting into the game. A lot of other systems out there keep things familiar, with environments that are nice and easy to understand, and races like dwarves and elves that a lot of people already know. But the world that Cosmere RPG is set on is very, very different. But let me just rewind a little bit and explain what the Cosmere is and where the Cosmere RPG currently sits within that universe. So the Cosmere is a universe created by an author called Brandon Sanderson, and he's written around about 24 books in that universe at the minute, all in different worlds. There are two main worlds at the minute, one called Scadrial, which is what all of the Mistborn books are based in, and then one called Roshar, which is where the books in the Stormlight Archives are all based in. And the goal of the Cosmere RPG is to continue adding more and more worlds that people can play on. But they've started out with Roshar. So in this video I'm going to be talking all about Roshar and everything you need to know to be able to jump into a game right away. Now, it's probably needless to say, but there are going to be some spoilers for the Stormlight Archives and any other books which are based on Roshar. Although I won't be spoiling any plots or storylines, I will be talking about the world. So if you watch this video to learn about the world, it might spoil some of the elements that you find in the book when you're learning about the world. In particular, I'm going to be talking about the environment and the cultures. Then I'm going to talk about the magic system, and then I'm going to end it by talking about the deity system. As I mentioned, I will not be spoiling anything to do with the plot or the story of those books. So let's start with the environment. Now, unlike a lot of the other worlds that TTRPGs are set in, the environment is actually very important because regularly there is a storm that comes through and pretty much destroys anything that is out in the open. So I'm not talking about a storm which is a little bit of a heavy wind. This is a storm of thick black clouds with lightning, and if you get stuck out in it, you're probably not going to make it. And this comes through every 7 days or so. So as you can imagine, this is going to change the environment and how people act in this world quite a lot. For example, a lot of the plant life will have shells to protect them from the wind, or they will retract back into the ground so that they can stay safe. And a lot of the wild creatures are also shelled so they can withstand the storm. And then when it comes to the people that are living in this world, they have set their cities into the side of stones, and everything is based around making sure that nothing gets broken during the storm. The majority of this world is also on rocks, so there isn't soil, grass, bushes and stuff like that. There is in one part of the world, but I'm not going to get too much into that because that would spoil the books a little bit. So just with those factors, you can start to see why this world is so different to a lot of the other worlds out there in TTRPGs. And then if we jump into cultures, I'm not going to break down every single culture that is in this world. That is something that you can learn as you play the game. But as you can imagine, with this storm that is ever present, long distance travel is pretty difficult, meaning that cultures are very isolated, and therefore they are very different. Which does make quite an interesting world to play in, because if you do manage to get from one civilization to another, they are going to be wildly different places. And this is a good time to talk about the races within the game. In D&D, for example, you've got races or species as they're now called, such as dwarves, elves, gnomes, and very familiar ones. But in Cosmere RPG, there are only two. There are humans, which you should know what humans are, hopefully. And then there are singers. And when I say singers, you are probably thinking, what? Something like Adele? But it is not Adele at all. These are beings with red marble skin and carapace that covers certain parts of their body. And they can change forms, so they could be in war form, which means their carapace is set up in a way which is for war, or they could be in work form, which means their carapace would be set up in a way to do work. And with these form changes, their personalities also change as well. So someone in war form might be a bit more aggressive, whereas someone in work form might be a bit more subdued. And there are other physiological changes, so if you're in the war form, you get more strength, but if you're in nimble form, you get more speed. And then, as I said earlier, although there is just humans and singers, because the cultures are so different, the humans are actually quite different in the different cultures as well. Now let's jump into the magic system, which once again is very different to other TTRPGs out there. So before we actually jump into how magic works, you need to know what a Spren is. A Spren is a cognitive being that will pop up in the world when something that they enjoy is happening. So for example, a flame Spren might pop up when there is a flame and they'll start dancing around it. Whereas a wind Spren will pop up when there is a large gust of wind and they will start flying through the wind with it. And there's lots of these. There's Joy Spren, which will turn up when someone is joyous. There's Rot Spren, that will turn up when something is rotting. And this picture here sort of gives you an idea of what it would look like in this world. You can see above the chef there is Joy Spren, and all over this picture there's loads of different Sprens that are just popping up. And this is completely normal in the world. So in order to play in this world, you have to get your head around the idea of there being lots of Spren. And if you're a DM, you're going to need to keep it in the back of your mind that Spren is a thing and they will be popping up all over the place. But what does that have to do with the magic system? Well, people who have magic in this world are known as Knights Radiant. And in order to become a Knights Radiant, two things have to happen. Firstly, you have to bond with a Spren, and then secondly, you have to say an ideal. An idea that is ever present in this world is oaths and ideals, and that plays a big part in this magic system. So for example, there is a Knights Radiant order called the Windrunners, and in order to become one of them, you need to bond with an Honor Spren. So how this would work thematically in the world is that you would go through the world and you would be very honourable, and then an Honour Spren would notice you and would start just sort of staying around you, and then eventually it would start talking to you and you would form a bond. Once that has happened, you can then say the first ideal of the Windrunners. And there's a specific set of words you have to say to make that ideal, but it's not just about saying it, you have to believe it in your core as well. And then when that happens, you are now a Knights Radiant and you get access to magic. Every order of the Knights Radiant has access to 2 surge bindings. And depending on what surges you get access to, depends on what type of magic you can do. The equivalent to this in D&D would be like schools of magic, but you just get 2 of them. Then in order to be able to actually do the magic, you need access to what is called Stormlight. So this storm that comes through the world every 7 days or so carries a stormlight, and people can put spheres out in the storm and they will soak up and absorb the stormlight. Knights Radiant can then breathe in the stormlight in order to use their powers. But common folk do use stormlight as well. It emits a small light, so they use it instead of lanterns and stuff like that, and they quite often use it as currency as well. But for Knights Radiant, it's very important to always have a good source of Stormlight so that they can empower themselves to be able to use their surges. So once again, comparing this to D&D, this would be the equivalent of being able to have spell slots so that they are able to do spells. The difference being that to get your spell slots back, you have to take a long rest in D&D, but in Cosmere RPG, you just have to find more Stormlight. So there you go, we've got through the environment, the culture and the magic, and hopefully you can already see how widely different this is from other systems. And that doesn't stop with the deities either. So in order to fully understand the deities, we need to talk about the Cosmere universe as a whole before we talk about Roshar. So a long time ago there was one god, but that god was destroyed and shattered into 16 pieces that are now called shards. And these shards need a host in order to have their magic used. And these hosts would just be normal people like you and I. And each of these shards embody a certain personality to an extent. So on Roshar, there are 3 shards: cultivation, honour, and odium. So cultivation is all about setting seeds, growing, nurturing. Honour is, about honour. And then odium is about hatred. I don't want to go into any more of it than that because this is sort of a big point in the Stormlight Archive books and I don't want to spoil that for you. But as you can imagine with those 3 shards, there are some quite obvious headbutting that could be happening between them. So now that you understand the environment, the different cultures, the different races, the idea of Spren and where that fits into the magic system, along with Stormlight and what Knights Radiants are, as well as the deity system, you are more than equipped to go and play the Cosmere RPG and have fun. The next world they will be releasing is in 2026, and it is the world of Scadrial, which is what the Mistborn books are based in, and I will be doing a video similar to this about that world when that comes out. And if you're a DM and you've read the Stormlight Archives, feel free to pass this to players who have not, so they can get a good overview of what the world is all about. I'm going to be doing more Cosmere RPG content as well, so make sure to subscribe so you can see that. And I've done this video here, which is about the differences between D&D and Cosmere RPG from a mechanical level.